Every name has a story, and behind every story is a human life. This video is about one name that deserves to be remembered: Blaze Bernstein. A 19-year-old college student with dreams, ambitions, and a future that should have stretched out before him like an open road. But on a cold January night in 2018, that future was stolen. This is the story of what happened to Blaze, the hatred that took his life, and the long journey toward justice that followed. Blaze Bernstein was born in April of 1998 in Southern California, where the sun seems to shine a little brighter and possibilities feel endless. His father worked in finance. His mother had been a lawyer before choosing to dedicate herself to raising their 3 children. By all accounts, Blaze was the kind of young man who lit up a room. He was creative, passionate, and unapologetically himself. He attended the Orange County School of the Arts, a place where students who think differently and dream bigger can find their tribe. And Blaze found his. He was openly gay, openly Jewish, and openly proud of who he was. After high school, he made it into the University of Pennsylvania, one of the most prestigious schools in the country. He was a sophomore there, studying and building a life far from home, when winter break came around and he returned to California to spend time with his family. It was supposed to be a normal visit, the kind where you sleep in your childhood bed, eat home-cooked meals, and catch up with old friends. On January 2nd, 2018, Blaze left his family's home in Lake Forest to meet up with someone he knew from high school, someone he thought he could trust. That someone was Samuel Woodward, a former classmate. They had gone to the same school, walked the same halls, maybe even shared a few classes. But whatever connection they once had, it was about to end in the most horrific way imaginable. Blaze never came home that night. His parents waited, they called, they texted, nothing. Hours turned into a day, and then days. The kind of silence that makes your stomach drop and your mind race through every terrible possibility. His family reported him missing, and a search began. For 8 agonizing days, they didn't know where he was or what had happened. And then, on January 10th, his body was found in a park. He had been stabbed 28 times. 28. Let that sink in for a moment. This wasn't a single act of violence. This was rage. This was hatred. This was someone who wanted to erase another human being from existence. 2 days after Blaze's body was discovered, police arrested Samuel Woodward. He was 20 years old, just a year older than Blaze. The two had known each other, had been classmates at the Orange County School of the Arts. But there was something dark lurking beneath the surface of Woodward's life, something that investigators would soon uncover. Samuel Woodward wasn't just a troubled young man. He was a member of Atomwaffen Division, a neo-Nazi terrorist group. Yes, you heard that right. A terrorist group in America in 2018. This wasn't some relic of history or a distant threat from another country. This was happening right here in suburban California, among young people who should have been focused on college classes and weekend plans. Atomwaffen Division is a group that glorifies violence, spreads hatred against Jewish people, people of color, and the LGBTQ community. They believe in accelerating the collapse of society through acts of terror, and Samuel Woodward had attended one of their training camps in Texas. He had dropped out of college to immerse himself in this world of hate. When police searched his online activity, they found messages that painted a chilling picture. He had been talking to other members of the group about baiting gay men. He had posted a picture of a knife with the caption, "Texting is boring, but murder isn't." He had discussed a previous victim he had attacked. This wasn't a random act of violence. This was something he had been building toward. The legal process that followed was long and complicated. Woodward was initially charged with murder and use of a deadly weapon, but as investigators dug deeper into his background and his motives, they added hate crime charges, 2 of them. One because Blaze was gay, one because Blaze was Jewish. The prosecution argued that this wasn't just murder. It was a targeted attack fueled by bigotry and extremism. Woodward pleaded not guilty. His defense team argued that he had Asperger's syndrome, that he struggled with social interactions, that he was confused about his own sexuality. They painted a picture of a young man who was lost, who didn't fully understand what he was doing, but the evidence told a different story. DNA evidence linked Woodward to the crime scene. His own messages revealed his hatred and his intentions. During the trial, which finally began in April of 2024, after years of delays, the prosecution laid out their case. They showed emails Woodward had sent. They presented photographs of him with known extremists. They detailed how he had been radicalized online, how his already conservative upbringing had been twisted into something far more dangerous. The defense tried a different approach. They admitted that Woodward had killed Blaze, but they argued it wasn't premeditated. They claimed that Blaze had shared flirtatious messages between himself and Woodward with other friends, and that Woodward had panicked. He wanted to keep their relationship secret, they said, because his father was homophobic and would call gay men terrible names. He was afraid of being outed. But here's the thing. Even if that were true, even if Woodward was struggling with his own identity and feared his father's reaction, that doesn't explain the 28 stab wounds. That doesn't explain the messages about baiting gay men. That doesn't explain the neo-Nazi training camp or the violent rhetoric he had been consuming and spreading. Fear and confusion don't lead someone to join a terrorist organization. Hatred does. On July 3, 2024, more than 6 years after Blaze Bernstein was killed, a jury found Samuel Woodward guilty of first-degree murder with hate crime enhancements. 6.5 years. That's how long Blaze's family had to wait for this moment. 6.5 years of living with the knowledge that their son, their brother, was taken from them in the most brutal way imaginable. In November of 2024, Woodward was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Some might say that's justice. Others might say no punishment could ever be enough. Both can be true, because nothing will bring Blaze back. Nothing will give his family another day with him, another conversation, another hug. Nothing will let him finish his degree, pursue his dreams, fall in love, build a life. All of that was stolen. And for what? Because he was gay? Because he was Jewish? Because someone had been so consumed by hatred that they saw another human being as less than human? This case is about more than one murder. It's about the very real danger of extremism, especially online extremism. Samuel Woodward didn't wake up one day and decide to join a neo-Nazi group. It was a process. He was exposed to hateful ideas, probably through websites and forums that seemed harmless at first. Maybe it started with edgy memes or jokes that pushed boundaries. Maybe it was videos that claimed to reveal hidden truths about society. But slowly, gradually, those ideas became more extreme. The rhetoric became more violent. And somewhere along the way, Woodward stopped seeing people like Blaze as people at all. He saw them as enemies, as threats, as targets. And he's not alone. Atomwaffen Division was linked to 5 deaths in just 8 months from 2017 to early 2018. 5 families destroyed, 5 lives cut short, all because of hatred. This isn't ancient history. This isn't something that only happens in other countries or in movies. This is happening now in our communities, among people who look like everyday Americans. Young men, often isolated and angry, are being radicalized online. They're being told that their problems are caused by Jewish people, by immigrants, by LGBTQ individuals. They're being fed a steady diet of conspiracy theories and violent fantasies, and some of them, like Samuel Woodward, act on it. Blaze Bernstein's mother, Jean Pepper, testified during the trial. She talked about her family, about their Jewish faith, about the son they loved and lost. It's hard to imagine the strength it takes to sit in a courtroom and face the person who killed your child, to hear the details of what happened, to relive the worst moment of your life over and over again. But she did it, because Blaze deserved to have his story told. He deserved to be remembered not just as a victim, but as a person, a son, a brother, a friend, a student with a bright future. There's something particularly cruel about hate crimes. They don't just target an individual, they target an entire community. When someone is killed because they're gay, it sends a message to every LGBTQ person that they're not safe. When someone is killed because they're Jewish, it sends a message to every Jewish person that they're not welcome. Hate crimes are designed to terrorize, to intimidate, to make people afraid to be who they are. and that's exactly what makes them so dangerous. Blaze Bernstein was living his life openly and authentically. He wasn't hiding who he was proud of his identity, and that pride, that refusal to be anything other than himself, made him a target. We have to ask ourselves some difficult questions. How do we stop this from happening again? How do we identify young people who are being radicalized before they hurt someone? How do we create a society where hatred isn't allowed to fester and grow? There are no easy answers, but we can start by paying attention. If someone you know is spending hours online in forums that promote extremist views, that's a red flag. If they start using dehumanizing language about certain groups of people, that's a red flag. If they glorify violence or talk about wanting to hurt others, that's a red flag. We can't afford to ignore these signs and hope they go away. We also need to create spaces where young people feel connected and valued. Extremist groups prey on isolation. They offer a sense of belonging to people who feel like they don't fit in anywhere else. If we can build communities where everyone feels seen and heard, where differences are celebrated rather than feared, we can cut off the pipeline that leads vulnerable individuals toward hatred. It's not a complete solution, but it's a start. And we need to be willing to have uncomfortable conversations about bigotry and prejudice. Not just the obvious, overt kind, but the subtle messages that tell people some lives matter less than others. Every joke that demeans someone for their identity, every stereotype that goes unchallenged, every time we stay silent when we should speak up, all of it contributes to a culture where hate can take root. Blaze Bernstein should be 26 years old right now. He should be finishing graduate school or starting a career. He should be making art, falling in love, traveling the world, living. Instead, his life is frozen at 19. His family visits his grave. His friends remember him on social media. His name appears in articles about hate crimes and extremism. That's not the legacy he deserved. He deserved to create his own legacy, to write his own story. But that choice was taken from him by someone who believed that hatred was more important than humanity. The conviction of Samuel Woodward doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't heal the wound left in the hearts of everyone who loved Blaze. But it does send a message. It says that hate crimes will not be tolerated. It says that taking someone's life because of who they are is not just murder, it's an attack on the values we claim to hold as a society. It says that justice, even when it takes 6.5 years, will eventually come. And maybe, just maybe, it will make someone else think twice before they let hatred consume them. Blaze Bernstein's name is now part of a long and tragic list. Matthew Shepard, Harvey Milk, the victims of the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting, the victims of the Pulse nightclub shooting, names that represent lives cut short by bigotry and violence. But these names also represent something else. They represent the ongoing fight for equality, for safety, for the right to exist without fear. Every time we say their names, we're refusing to let hatred have the final word. We're insisting that their lives mattered, that they will be remembered, that their stories will continue to be told. So remember Blaze Bernstein. Remember that he was more than a headline or a statistic. He was a real person with hopes and dreams and people who loved him. Remember that hatred is not inevitable. It's a choice. And we can choose differently. We can choose compassion. We can choose understanding. We can choose to see the humanity in everyone, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult, because that's how we honor the memory of people like Blaze, not just by mourning their loss, but by working to create a world where no one else has to die simply for being who they are. That's all for today. Don't forget to subscribe and be kind to each other.